Alcatraz, a high-security prison where every inmate learns one thing. There is no way out.
Stolen spoons, dummy heads made out of paper mache, and a raincoat raft, they burrowed their way to freedom.
It appears to be the first successful escape in the history of the maximum security prison.
But brothers John and Clarence Anglin and Frank Morris disappeared into the night and have never been found.
The escape triggered the greatest manhunt in San Francisco's history, as agents of the FBI, Coast Guardsmen, Highway Patrol, sheriff's deputies, and local police join in the search.
They found 3 decoyed heads lying in the beds.
The family believes this is a photo of John and Clarence Anglin taken at their home in Brazil in 1975.
3 men vanished from the most secure prison in American history. The FBI searched for 17 years. They found nothing. Then in 2013, 51 years after the escape, a letter arrived at the San Francisco Police Department. It began, "My name is John Anglin. I escaped from Alcatraz in June 1962 with my brother Clarence and Frank Morris. I'm 83 years old and in bad shape. I have cancer." Yes, we all made it that night, but barely. The FBI subjected the letter to fingerprint analysis, DNA testing, and handwriting examination. The results were inconclusive, which means the FBI cannot prove it's real, and they cannot prove it isn't. June 11, 1962, Alcatraz Federal Penitentiary, San Francisco Bay, the most escape-proof prison the United States government had ever built, sitting on a cold, wind-battered island in the middle of one of the most treacherous bodies of water on the Pacific coast. Alcatraz had housed Al Capone, Machine Gun Kelly, the Birdman. In its 29 years of operation as a federal facility, no prisoner had ever successfully escaped. The water was too cold, the currents too strong, the guards too many, the island too isolated. In the early morning hours of June 12th, a guard doing routine bed checks noticed something wrong. 3 cells, 3 inmates apparently asleep. He looked closer. They were dummy heads, made from soap, plaster, flesh-tone paint, and real human hair, collected strand by strand from the prison barbershop over months. They had been placed in the beds to fool the night guard. The real occupants of those cells, Frank Morris and brothers John and Clarence Anglin, were gone. The prison went into lockdown. Guards searched the island. Coast Guard vessels swept the bay. The FBI was notified within the hour. Nothing. To understand how 3 men escaped from an escape-proof prison, you have to understand who Frank Morris was. Morris arrived at Alcatraz in January 1960, convicted of bank robbery and burglary. He had a tested IQ of over 130. He had spent most of his adult life behind bars, and he had a history at every institution he had ever entered of attempting to break out. That history was exactly why they sent him to Alcatraz, the prison designed specifically for people who couldn't be contained anywhere else. Morris arrived and immediately began looking for a way out. He found it in the ventilation system. Behind the rear wall of each cell was a utility corridor, a narrow maintenance passage running the length of the cell block. The ventilation grills separating the cells from this corridor were the weak point. The concrete around them had deteriorated over decades. Morris tested it. The concrete crumbled. In December 1961, 6 months before the escape, Morris began digging. He recruited the Anglin brothers and a 4th inmate, Alan West. They worked at night, after lights out, using spoons sharpened against the cell floor, a crude drill fashioned from a vacuum cleaner motor, and anything else they could acquire through the prison's internal economy. They worked in shifts. They concealed their progress each morning with fake grill panels made from cardboard and soap, painted to match the original. While they dug, they built 50 raincoats, stolen, traded, acquired one at a time, were stitched together to form a 6 by 14-foot raft. They made life vests from the same material. They inflated everything using a concertina stolen from another inmate and modified into a makeshift bellows. They made contact lenses and oars from plywood scraps. They spent 6 months building an escape kit inside the most secure prison in America, while guards walked past their cells twice a night, every night, and nobody noticed. On the night of June 11th, Morris, John Anglin, and Clarence Anglin climbed through their enlarged ventilation grills into the utility corridor. They scaled the plumbing pipes to the roof of the cell block. They crossed the roof. They used a large exterior pipe to slide 50 feet to the ground. They cut through the perimeter barbed wire. They scrambled down the embankment to the water line. Allen West was not with them. He had not finished removing his grill. By the time he broke through, the others were gone. He climbed to the roof, looked out at the black water of the bay, and climbed back down. He returned to his cell. He would spend the rest of his sentence at Alcatraz, eventually helping investigators piece together exactly what had happened, while never knowing if the men he'd helped plan the escape actually made it. At 11:40 p.m. on June 11, 1962, 3 men launched a homemade raft into San Francisco Bay and began paddling toward Angel Island, a mile and a half away across some of the most dangerous water on the Pacific coast. The temperature of the bay that night, approximately 50 degrees Fahrenheit. The current, strong, unpredictable, running toward the open ocean, the odds of survival. The FBI would later calculate them as negligible. What the FBI found in the following days was fragmentary: a wooden paddle near the island, a homemade life vest washing up on Cronkite Beach in Marin County, waterproof packets containing personal photographs of the Anglin family, and a lawyer's contact information found floating in the bay. Several weeks later, a body dressed in blue clothing similar to a prison uniform was found up the coast. It was too badly deteriorated to be identified. No fingerprints, no DNA, no confirmed identification. The FBI investigated for 17 years. They chased leads across the country. They interviewed family members, former inmates, criminal associates. In December 1979, they officially closed the case. Their conclusion: Morris and the Anglin brothers had almost certainly drowned in the bay, presumed dead. Case closed. But the Anglin family never accepted it. Beginning at Christmas 1962, 6 months after the escape, family members reported receiving cards and postcards they believed were from John and Clarence. The brothers' mother received an anonymous bouquet of flowers every year until her death in 1973. At her funeral in that same year, family members reported 2 unusually tall men wearing heavy makeup, attending the service, staying for the duration, and leaving without identifying themselves. Family members believed they were John and Clarence Anglin, saying goodbye to their mother in disguise. In 1989, another Anglin brother named Robert claimed that 2 unknown men had arrived at the viewing for their father's body. They stayed, they wept, they left without speaking to anyone. Then the case went cold for decades until 2013. A letter arrived at the Richmond station of the San Francisco Police Department, handwritten, 2 pages. It claimed to be from John Anglin, then 83 years old, dying of cancer, writing from an undisclosed location. The letter stated that all 3 men had made it across the bay that night, that Frank Morris had died in 2008, that Clarence Anglin had died in 2011, that John the last survivor, was willing to turn himself in to federal authorities in exchange for a single condition: 1 year in a minimum security prison facility and access to cancer treatment. I'm 83 years old and in bad shape. I have cancer. Yes, we all made it that night, but barely. The FBI received the letter. They investigated for 5 years before making its existence public in 2018. Fingerprint analysis, inconclusive. DNA, inconclusive. Handwriting comparison, inconclusive. The FBI had no usable handwriting samples of John Anglin from his time at Alcatraz. Not enough to confirm, not enough to deny. The letter's author was never identified. No one ever came forward to claim it was a hoax. No one ever showed up to negotiate the surrender. John Anglin, if it was John Anglin, was never heard from again. In 2003, the Discovery Channel's Mythbusters built a replica of the raincoat raft using the same materials and methods. They launched it from Alcatraz at the same time of night, following not the assumed northern route toward Angel Island, but instead the bay's actual currents moving west toward the Golden Gate. They reached the Marin headlands successfully. The FBI had spent 17 years assuming the men went north. The current goes west. In 2015, a photograph emerged, allegedly taken in Brazil in 1975, 13 years after the escape. It showed two men who family members identified as John and Clarence Anglin, older but recognizable. The U.S. Marshals investigated. They could not confirm the identification. They could not rule it out. And then there is the question the FBI has never fully answered. The Anglin family's attorney maintained for years that Robert Anglin, another brother, had stated before his own death in 2010 that he had been in contact with John and Clarence from 1963 until approximately 1987. 24 years of contact. If true, this means the brothers lived as free men for a quarter century after escaping Alcatraz, hiding, moving, surviving. The FBI never confirmed this. They never confirmed anything. 3 men escaped from the most secure prison in American history on a raft made from raincoats. Their dummy heads fooled the guards for 7 hours. They reached the water at 11:40 p.m. What happened after that? The most powerful law enforcement agency in the world spent 17 years trying to answer. They couldn't. The FBI says they drowned. The 2013 letter says they didn't. The Mythbusters proved the raft could have made it. The family says they attended their mother's funeral in disguise 12 years after the escape. And somewhere, in a classified file in a federal building, the results of the 2013 letter analysis sit marked inconclusive, not proven real, not proven false. 3 men, 1 night, a raft made from raincoats. And the FBI's best answer, 62 years later, we don't know.